Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our community webinar for the first time this year. Today's topic will be on suicide speaking from the heart, where we will have open discussions around this highly sensitive and emotive topic, connecting with some women who will be speaking from the heart. Please remember to mute yourselves, and we will take questions at the end in the chat box. Our first speaker who will be joining us today is Glynis. Glynis is a well-known South African mental health journalist dealing with the reality of her son's suicide based in Durban. Glynis and her husband, Chris, woke one Sunday morning to the devastating discovery of their 25-year-old son, Spencer, found dead in his bed. Surrounded by loving family and friends, Glynis pieces together the puzzles of his death, writing in an innate intensity of loss and grief, but also of the joys of celebrating her son's life. Her book, Waterboy, will touch anyone who has directly or indirectly experienced this ultimate heartbreak. Through her wisdom and insight, the book attempts to understand the realities of depression and suicide, removing some of the stigma surrounding suicide. Nothing could have prepared her for the loss of her son at 25. A quote from Glynis: "If this book can help one person avoid suicide or bring new understanding to those who have lost someone, it will have achieved its goal." The second speaker we have is Paula. Paula is a mother to a son and 2 daughters and a grandmother to 5 wonderful granddaughters. Sadly, her one daughter, Amy, left their wonderful family almost 14 years ago, turning their world upside down, never to know normal again, and for Amy to never meet her nieces. This is a picture of Amy Joanna Veale, who was born on 9th of March 1994 and died 25th May 2008. Our next speaker will be Happi Vorster. Happi spent most of her childhood and teenage years with chronic depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts from mental, physical, and sexual abuse. She is a survivor of multiple attempts to end her life. In this webinar, we will be covering a glimpse through Happi's eyes as a multiple suicide survivor. Happi's aim is to help the audience gain a deeper appreciation and understanding of the value of empathy in suicide prevention. The topics she will cover are on how companionship, love, and trust can break down the barriers that sufferers put up to prevent the pain that no one can understand them.
Bad days. We all have them. Days that leave us feeling alone, hurt, misunderstood, drained and overwhelmed.
Daar waar alles net te veel raak. En vir sommige mense is hierdie dag elke dag.
Every day they carry around this pain, neatly packaged within a smile and great thanks, so we'd never know what's really under the surface.
Other times they wave the red flag high, warning signs and subtle cries for help. Not just feelings of sadness, but anger.
Ukukhathazeka, ukulala kancane noma ukungalali, ukuzivalela nokungazihlanganisi nabanye kanye nokuphatheka kabi.
Reaksies wat mense so laat reageer.
That's just not like you.
They say it's just a rough patch.
You're just going through a phase.
Kodwa angeke sikwazi ukushaya indiva odabeni olujulile kangaka.
I'm sending out an SOS, scared.
Tog hoop ek dat jy sal agterkom, die onderdrukte nood en pyn.
Or even the contemplation of suicide as a solution.
Uma umuntu ecabanga ukuzibulala, usuke efuna umnaki.
It's not an act to gain attention.
It's not just throwing a tantrum.
They want you to notice.
Om hulle te oortuig dat wat hulle voel, hoef nie die enigste manier te wees nie.
They want you to ask, to care.
Ngakho-ke indlela yokuvikela umuntu osondelene naye ukuthi umbuze ukuthi.
Are you thinking of killing yourself?
Of course it's easier to brush the signals aside and say things like,
Jy oorreageer.
Awuneliseki.
Don't be such a drama queen.
You don't really want to kill yourself.
that's not going to solve anything.
Onbewus van die skade wat ons woorde aanrig, terwyl ons worstel met die regte ding om te sê.
So what should we say?
I'm sorry you feel so bad.
Ngingakusiza kanjani?
We'll get through this together.
Kom ons hou jou veilig.
What do you need from me?
Hi, Glynis. I'm really happy that you've decided to share with us. It's going to make a huge difference to a lot of people, your story, and also the fact that you've written a book about suicide and especially about your son's suicide. I'd like to know from you, who is or was Spencer, your water boy?
Spencer was a wonderful child, a golden child, one of those, he's totally effortless. He flowed through life. He excelled at what he did. He had friends. He was outgoing. And he got a matric with a 90% aggregate, straight A's, and went to study mechanical engineering at UKZN. And all seemed to be fine, except he reached his final year of study. And then one day, I walked in and found my beautiful, strapping, 6-foot-tall son curled up in a fetal position on the floor of his room, crying. That was the beginning of a whole lot of searching. Obviously, we got him in. He had a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a doctor first to check any other possibilities. And what was found was that he was diagnosed with major depression and generalized anxiety disorder, plus the complication of an underlying blood condition, an inherited one, thalassemia minor, which is not normally that big a deal, but you have misshapen red blood cells, so you have less oxygen reaching different parts of your body, so your energy levels are low and you can battle to concentrate. And I think as he got older and as the pressures of academia in that weighed, that became a factor for him. So anyway, we thought we had that part of it in control. He was on medication supervised by the psychiatrist. He was going for sessions. And then he went back to university, having dropped out for a while and taught master math. And all seemed to be on track in the year 2019 when he was 25 years old. And then he went back, got his degree. He applied for a job, his first full-time job. It was all lined up. He was going to start work on the Monday morning. And on the Sunday morning, my husband went downstairs, and the next thing I knew, my husband was standing in our bedroom door when I lay there reading the Sunday papers and just said, Spencer is dead. Nothing prepares you for that kind of shock. And of course, I rushed down the stairs, and there our beautiful boy was leaning back on his cushions, and he looked calm and peaceful, but he was very clearly gone. Tragedy tried to call for help. People come in, next thing you're standing at the gate, and as I explain in the book, the mortuary van is backing out, and you, little family, my husband, myself, his younger brother, are huddled at the gate, and our boy is gone. And you're just there for this endless questioning and self-flagellation. What did I do wrong? How did I miss it? All those issues which anybody who's lost anybody, any child particularly, battles with. But when you lose them to suicide, where it feels like it's their choice, it's devastating, because as a mother, you seem to, you feel that your whole purpose is to raise that next generation and set them into life as the best you can. And you feel a monumental failure on that level, and just the aching missing of that child.
Yes, no, I absolutely can understand that. And, suicide has been described as an earthquake of catastrophic proportions. And I think that sort of sums it up. That is, your whole world just collapses and you can't put it together. It's like Humpty Dumpty has fallen and it's never going to come together again, And can you share then some of your insights that you had on this, that you have still on this road less traveled?
I thought I understood depression and anxiety. I'm a health writer. I've even got some awards for it. But you don't have any concept until it touches you personally, as in so much in life. And I think it's taken dealing with my own depression in the form of grief to really understand what people deal with in that. And I think it's not even so much the idea that there's this big black cloud of depression pressing down on you, but that depression can kind of suck all the color and life out of things, and everything becomes kind of blank and bland and meaningless and hopeless. And that terrible understanding of what my boy went through has been very, very difficult. But yeah, that was one thing that definitely came home to me. But the other thing was the need to share that with others and to reach out to them. And through doing Waterboy, I've found people have tracked me down online and whatever and shared their stories. So my insights into depression and anxiety have again grown through what they have fed me, their own experiences. And so many people have gone through this. And just hearing what they've got to say, especially in terms of the struggles with children and young people today. And I think it's particularly difficult to have a child who's past the age of consent. In my case, I know the other person on your program lost a child at 14, but my boy was considered a young adult. And so you have confidentiality clauses coming in, and you kind of feel that you're locked out of their treatment, which is understandable because you know why there's confidentiality clauses, but part of you just wishes that somehow more of the reality of the condition had been shared with some of those professional people. It's just something I personally experienced, and some of the other people that have communicated with me.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And I think one of the important things is that people who are specialists and maybe haven't gone through suicide themselves have a different awareness. And I think the fact that you being a journalist and discussing mental health is going to be of great benefit to you one day, it probably is now, also to discuss it from the heart and not just from an abstract intellectual point of view, which is, very easy to do when it hasn't really touched you. So what has really changed for you around the conversations of mental health at this point?
Well, certainly the area of confidentiality. I mean, I only discovered after this had happened that he had been on a suicide alert with both the psychologist and the psychiatrist, although he stopped going to the psychologist in his last year, because in his last year he'd also decided to wean himself off meds and done so under the psychiatrist's supervision. So it was, what can I say? I think one just understands that I wish I'd known more how very, very serious it was. I also discovered only afterwards that it's when you wean yourself off meds that is probably the most dangerous period. I quote in the book Robert Sapolsky, who's a top neurologist in the States, who said, that is definitely the most dangerous time. And for all the side effects of meds, and my boy was very keen to wean himself off them, and as he seemed to be making good progress, the psychiatrist agreed to that. For all the side effects that they have, he was slightly duller, he was calmer, but he was not my boy. You still kind of need something if it's going to be a barrier between you and the horrible agony of depression and anxiety. So he battled to live with the meds, but he could not live without them. This is what happened.
That is one of the worst things that people with depression at that level have to deal with, is their feeling they are totally out of it, and that the color, as you say, has gone out of their life because of the meds, but they can't do without them because it's going to make it worse. And it's such a difficult position to be in, and so much pain. And that's the issue. It's that pain that they go through. And I've always said, having lost my partner to suicide, is that if I sort of understood why he did it, when I felt that pain ongoing and I knew though that mine was going to sort of die away, within some time. I had that knowledge, but someone who's got that all the time, it just becomes unbearable. So I sometimes get that, it's not easy. So this journey is very lonely and isolating. And in your book, Waterboy, you talk about having some wonderful friends, and you call them the Trinity, which I find such a beautiful description. Can you share your thoughts on the importance of reaching out to others and others reaching out to you?
I think it's what kept me relatively sane-ish. The fact that I had these wonderful friends, my earliest days at school, one I'd known since I was 4 years old. One, she was now living in Copenhagen in Denmark, another one now living in the States, and the third one in the Cape. And from the very first night, I could share my feelings and my thoughts and my fears and with them, and on WhatsApp, just on WhatsApp calls, and they would respond to me. And then sometimes if there was more that I could tap out with my little fingers, I would email them. And those exchanges, be able to feel heard and understood, and to get insights from other people, 3 very different people with different approaches. One was very no nonsense, and she would slap me down. No, don't be stupid, you can't. And the other one was very calm and gentle. She was a UNICEF worker, and the other had done therapy, counseling training. So that kind of exchange was amazing, and just to feel that you're not alone. And then to also learn that there's contact available from other people who've been in your same situation. Now, my member of the Trinity who lives in the Cape, she had lost her husband to suicide, her first husband. So she had an insider's view on it. But I think this is why something like support groups through SADAG or through solos, and now I gather through this new Panda app, is a really important idea. If you don't have your own circle of friends, you should still be able to reach out to understanding and empathetic others. It shares your burden, makes it possible to bear it.
True.
And you just feel heard.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. And listen, just one more question I've got for you is, there's a big stigma around mental illness and suicide. And even if we have progressed, and I can see the progression from when I lost my partner 13 years ago to now, people are definitely talking about it. What more should we do to really try and defeat the stigma? Because this is what's holding everything back. Suicide, mental illness is still the Cinderella of all illnesses. It isn't put on the same status as normal physical illness like cancer, for instance, etc. So what do you think can help?
The only thing is to keep on talking about it and to call it what it is. The S word is now the new F word, and nobody will actually say it. You say to somebody, I initially, people would say, what happened? And I would say, he was depressed. And people would immediately understood what it meant. But to actually use the word suicide, because it does exist and people do need to name it and understand that it's an illness like any other. It's just like a cancer or any other condition, but you can't see the cells, but it's just as pernicious, and you've got just as or even less control over it in many ways, unless you're prepared to do the meds route. And I think much should be done to improve that side of things. We've just got to keep talking, and we've got to keep sharing. And I'm just hoping the conversations that get started even around this book will help. And I know a lot of people have passed it on to other people who've lost people and things like that. So anybody who can speak out, I think that it's really good. Also, the royalties from from the book are going to SADAG, and SADAG does amazing work. So anything to support them putting out the conversation about depression and mental health, that is a positive thing to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to end it, I'd like to show the book so that everyone can see it. We will be, giving the details at the beginning of our webinar. But where can we get it from, Glynis? Where can this book be bought?
You can get it at most bookshops, exclusives, bargain books, or they will order it if they're out of stock. We can get it online at Loot, Take a Lot, and on Amazon. So yeah, it is available.
It is available.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Glynis, and thanks so much for sharing with us. It's really been interesting to hear you and heartbreaking. And I just wish you all the best, you and your family. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you.
Paula, welcome to our webinar, Talking from the Heart. Actually, it's Suicide, Talking from the Heart. And Paula, you lost your daughter, Amy, 14 years ago, and she was 14. Please tell us a little bit about Amy.
Okay, Amy was the youngest of my 3 children. She was a very happy child. She skipped and hopped and moved around wherever she wanted to. She always had her, at that day, in those days, it was a CD Walkman, and she had her music blasting in her ears. If it was not in her ears, you could always find her. Wherever the music was, that is where Amy was. We grew up, my kids grew up at the beach, so she had a love of swimming, and she eventually joined Nippers, which is junior life saving. Amongst her many other attributes, she started modeling at the age of, as far as she could start walking, so about 15 months, she was on a ramp already modeling her little bit of fluff. She enjoyed life. She was always there for everybody. Anybody that wanted something, she was there for a shoulder to cry on, an ear to listen. And yet, sadly, when she needed somebody, they weren't there. Her vivacious personality just lit up a room when she walked in. You always knew where she was. She was my beautiful baby. She was a lovely, I can't even say woman. She was a teenager. It sounds so bad. She would have been 28 now. So it's very hard to relate to somebody who's been suspended in time. She started high school in 2008, and she did not want to go to the same school as her siblings because she wanted to make her own identity. By the end of the first term, she was already nominated for the second team hockey, where she was competing against 16 and 17-year-olds. She sure as hell gave them some serious competition, and some of them didn't like it. And there were some issues of bullying that came up. It was due to these bullying and emotional teenage years that actually led her to her depression, which eventually led her to her demise. Her wish, I found a document once she had died, what she wants to do when she grows up. And she wanted to be a doctor so she can heal everybody.
Oh, how special. Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Wow. And Paula, how did you and your family cope with her death? And what were the challenges? Because this must be the most devastating death a parent and siblings actually have to endure and go on this journey. So how did you all cope as a family, and what were the challenges?
Okay. Wow. How did we cope? We didn't cope. Nobody has any idea what it's like unless you've been through the death of a child, especially when it's been suicide, when you don't always know the answers as to why they did it. you used to think it's devastating. I cannot cope. This can't be happening to us. I'm dreaming. Please wake me up. It's surreal. You cannot begin to even comprehend how you could possibly cope with something like this. One of my worst challenges was we had to unfortunately go and choose a coffin. And the next moment I found myself on my knees crying my heart out, physical pain, and my words just came out. I shouldn't be choosing a coffin for a 14-year-old. That was something that has stuck in my mind very vividly in those first few days after the death of Amy. My oldest daughter and son battled with the acceptance of her loss, and they missed her little comments, her little cheekiness, her teasing of them. That just wasn't there. It just felt like an incomplete family at the time. Yes. It has taken us very long to get over it. Unfortunately, in 2008, phones did not have much video recording on them. So we do not have all those dozens of video recordings that you do every day with family. And it's sad that we've got nothing like that to fall back on, to see those memories. Yeah. Initially, we used to phone her cell phone several times a day so we could hear her, "This is Amy speaking, leave a message." That's, unfortunately, we lost that after a while, which was very sad for us.
Yes.
Some of our challenges was the attitudes of other people who used to just say, "Get over it, this is a sin." People are totally blinded by it. It was very challenging at that time to hold her head up and say she's done it for a reason. She was sick. Depression is a disease. And unfortunately, mental illness people do not take as being anything serious.
In fact, you're right. Mental illness is seen as a Cinderella of all illnesses. It's not taken as seriously as someone who's got cancer. And the stigma certainly doesn't help.
Yeah.
For sure.
Further challenges that we've had over the years is, as we've seen her friends grow up, we've seen them matriculate, we've seen them have boyfriends, get married, have children, get older. She is 14. She will never, ever be more than 14. Often I want to take an updated photo of her to know what she looks like.
Yes.
That is something that we just have to deal with. One of the challenges we have in our life. And as we've reached milestones in our family, we realize that she's not there, that she's not been able to meet her 5 nieces.
That's right.
That's sad.
It is. It's like something's missing, hey?
There will always be something missing next to us.
That's for sure. Gee, thanks, Paula, for that. I know that's going to help a lot of people, because people don't know how others feel that are going through something like you have gone through, and parents who are busy going through this now. It will definitely benefit them just to see where you are now, you know. And I know you were part of the SOLA support group, Survivors of Loved Ones of Suicide. Did you find benefit going to this support group? And if so, would you recommend this type of assistance to others?
Yes, totally. Amy had been gone about 3 months, and we saw an advert for the Solace group. And we went through for the first time with very mixed feelings. But we soon felt at home that we were able to talk to people who understood us, who's been through the same things that we've been through. They were not professionals. They were just everyday people like us who have lost a family member or a child to suicide. At these meetings, we actually realized how many more younger and younger people are choosing this way to end their life, which is very sad.
Yes.
In these meetings, there were many stories told, there were many tears that flowed, but you could see slowly, and with myself and my children, that we took little steps forward, and you'd move forward and then you take one big leap backwards. But I found that the Solace group and the leaders, Joy and Laurie, were absolutely there to support us. We had any problems, they were there just to give us that little bit of a support just to get over that hard moment at that particular time. If anybody has this type of group, and it is just for suicide, not for general deaths, I would strongly recommend it, because you're able to interact with somebody who understands where you're coming from and not telling you to just get over it, move along.
That is true, because from my experience having facilitated this group, what I find is that it certainly doesn't take away the pain, but it releases some of that burden that you have on you, with better understanding that you're not alone in that moment, that there are other people who are going through similar and who really do understand you, and they might be a little bit further down the road, and you sort of go, oh my goodness, I just have to hang in there, because I can also be at that level at some point, and that pain will, sort of subside and become easier to manage. So yes, I do see that benefit. Thank you for that, Paula. And last question to you, what would you tell other mothers or people who have just started this devastating journey of having lost someone to suicide?
Okay, if given a choice, don't let it happen. If you're there for your child, be there for your child. See the signs and symptoms. But this is not an easy journey. It doesn't end either. There are good days, and there are other days when you fall down and don't think you're even going to get out of the pit. The important dates on a calendar, birthdays, months, birthdays, Christmases, Easter, special occasions, she's not there. Why isn't she here? Is something that you continually ask yourself. When you reach that very low point, just try and remember the memories. Remember the happy times that were there. I know it hurts. It feels like you've been stabbed in the heart, extreme pain. But it does become more manageable with time. You don't get over a loss of a child. You just learn to cope with it better. It's been a long, hard journey. It's not easy. Sometimes a song, and the song that really gets to me a lot is The Rose. We were playing it in the car the day before she died. And I just started crying with the song, little realizing how much significance it would have in my life afterwards. It's a person, a friend, a sound that can just trigger you off, and you all fall down. You learn to live, but you don't get past it. You do not move on. It is a constant reminder of that they are still there with you. I do believe they're here in mind. You learn to cope.
Yes, I know. It is a very difficult journey. But what I think is important is that what defines Amy is not her suicide, but who she was. She was your Rose, or she is your Rose. Oh, yes. And she was this vivacious, lovely girl. So thank you so much, Paula, for sharing today with us. I think it's going to really help a lot of people. And just listening to you talking from the heart has been a blessing. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Happi, hi, welcome to our webinar, Suicide Talking from the Heart. So, Happi, you spent most of your childhood and teenage years living with chronic depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. You are also a survivor of multiple attempts to end your life. So since it's Teenage Suicide Prevention Week, please can you share with us, especially our teenage audience, what is it that played a major role towards your journey of recovery, well-being, and healing?
I think, okay, for me, it would be talking and going for therapy. It took me a long time to accept the conditions that I had. And I realized that I had to go through the process of healing through talking and letting someone in on what is happening to me, because of this thing that people don't understand, no one's going to understand. And then it wasn't until a doctor also mentioned that you have to go through the pain of reliving certain things in order to heal. So for me, it was mostly just a lot of therapy, talking, and not just talking to therapists, talking to anybody that I feel could use that information about me. Because a lot of people look at me like, oh, you got it all together, you're good, what? But in the meantime, they don't really know that inside I don't have it all together. And to be also honest with my feelings and where I am as well. So that's what helped me in my journey. Also stepping out of myself as well, yeah. And medication.
So in terms of support from family, friends, you know, are there people who played a role, or was it a struggle for you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for me, it was a struggle because my family, first of all, don't understand mental illness, depression, and all that stuff. So it was a lonely road for me because I would try and convince them that it's a legit thing. So eventually, it was just therapy, you know. That was the only support I had, I would say. And then also, yeah, just, I don't know, hey, it was tough. It's tough. It was very tough, you know, and I can't say it's eased up a bit, but now it's more like, okay, there's sort of like acceptance, there's something wrong with me, but still not understanding fully what it is. So for me, support, it only came now in my adult life, now that I'm more verbal about it, where people are more like, hey, me too, you know, and then building the support structure together. Otherwise, before that, in my teenage years, I'd say it was a uphill climb alone. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing with us. And then just a final question. Just a message of hope to teenagers who may be struggling with things that you have struggled with. Please can you just provide a little message of hope or toolkit for them?
Okay. I'm not going to say that whatever you're going through is going to stop, but you have in you the strength to get through it. You have in you the strength and the hope to get through whatever you're going through. Today, it's hard. Today, it feels like it's too much for you, but you have the strength in you to make it through. Maybe you don't know how you're going to make it, but believe in yourself, believe in your own strength, and reach out. Maybe you don't find that you can reach out to your family, reach out with your school, friends, find someone. There's someone out there that you can reach out to. And if you find speaking to someone that doesn't understand where you're coming from and how you're feeling, it's okay. A lot of people don't understand. Just keep moving forward until you find someone that will listen to you. But no matter what happened, you are worth it. You deserve the best, and you're a strong person. And the fact that you're alive says a lot. So just, yeah, believe in yourself. I believe in you. And I know you can do it. You know. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Happi. And we gladly and really appreciate your presence and giving us your insight for this webinar. And thank you. I'm sure everyone, the audience and the teenagers who will be watching this webinar are going to greatly appreciate your insights and your inputs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're now going to hand over to our psychologist, Curwyn Mapaling. He is a registered clinical psychologist and a senior lecturer in the School of Psychosocial Health at Northwest University. His passion lies in community and positive psychology. He has been awarded various scholarships. Curwyn is a Frederick Ebert Stiftung Fellow, Abe Bailey Fellow, and a Mandela Rhodes Scholar. He's going to do a short PowerPoint presentation for us on an overview on suicide and teenagers. Thank you. Over to you, Curwyn.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Lori, for that introduction. Thank you, President SADAG, for the opportunity to present this afternoon. So I'll just get into it. So suicide, just a brief introduction before we get into teen suicide specifically. So in South Africa, at least 23 completed suicides are occurring daily. And even though the rates of attempted suicide are higher in or amongst females, men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women in South Africa. And as early as 1995, if you look at the work by the World Health Organization, then already they regarded suicide as a global public health crisis. And because overall suicide is the 10th leading cause of death globally. Sorry, can everyone still hear me?
Yeah, if everybody could please just mute. Could you mute?
Okay.
Thanks, Curwyn. You can continue. Sorry.
So it's looking specifically at teen suicide within in South Africa. It's still regarded as a public health crisis. And according to the World Health Organization, again, we can see that it is the second most common cause of death for those aged between the years of 15 to 29. And within South African data and research specifically, that has shown that for this age group, it has the highest probability of dying when compared to other age groups, with the percentage of, just short of 50% over there, 42.7%. Beyond that, it is the third most common cause of death amongst adolescents, 15 to 19 years, so just short of the 29 years there by 10 years. And depression, and this link we'll touch on a bit later, is globally the third highest disease burden among adolescents. So although not everyone that is depressed experiences suicidal ideation or has a plan or intent to complete suicide or attempt suicide, most individuals, according to the research that are suicidal, have been diagnosed or would be diagnosed with depression. SADAG data indicates that 9% of teenage deaths in the country are due to suicide. And quite interestingly, last year, for the first half of the year, approximately 17.8% of South African high school students attempted suicide. With all of that being said, and taking all of the stats and research into consideration, the stats are often unreliable for various reasons. There is still a lot of stigma and therefore a lot of underreporting still takes place in this area and in other areas of mental health research in general. Specific stats for SA teenagers, the age groups, so the 13 to 18 years, are more sort of traditional view of a teenager or adolescent. So when you look at that age group, it's challenging to report on because there's a lack of systemic data collection specifically. Okay. behavior. Sorry. So warning signs or indicators, the term sometimes used interchangeably. So sometimes there are no signs or indicators, although the research would suggest that some individuals who engage in suicidal behavior will do or say something which informs others of their intentions before they either attempt or complete suicide. And this is sometimes evidenced by suicidal ideation, so having thoughts of death or thoughts of wanting to die, of no longer wanting to live, behavioral changes, so people doing things out of character or different to their normal behavior, because normal behavior to me is not normal behavior to you, and we really need to understand those changes within the context of the individual and those that know the person best. And then our neurovegetative functioning, so changes in appetite, that can be eating too much, eating too little, and the same goes for sleeping. Just a note here is to not disregard your observations, because chances are that those closest to the individual, whether it's an intimate partner, family member, sibling, colleague, you that interact with a person, you would be more likely to observe these changes before they see it themselves sometimes. So we always treat the signs and indicators, when they are present, as serious. Some possible signs, so a lot of this has been said in the videos earlier, but feeling like a burden, being isolated or isolating themselves, then experiencing increased anxiety, feeling trapped or in unbearable pain, increased substance use, looking for a way to access lethal means, so someone tells you that they now want to acquire a gun, something to that effect, expressing increased anger or rage, mood swings, expressing hopelessness, and talking or posting about wanting to die, which we see quite often, and making plans for suicide. The more possible signs, so even though that was quite a long list, it's by no means limited to what was on the previous slide or what's on this slide. So again, here we see the feelings of hopelessness and feeling trapped, feeling disempowered, having poorer problem-solving skills, being diagnosed with moderate or severe depression, a recent loss that can be due to death, bereavement, but also separation and divorce, interpersonal conflict, loneliness, poor social support, and a family history of completed suicide. But from the research, we see that suicide attempts are strong predictors of future suicide attempts and those who would go on to complete suicide. We might ask ourselves why, naturally as humans, and it's impossible to ask those who have completed suicide about their experience, because they would be the real experts with the answer to this question. And for those of us remaining, we often have more questions than answers. Some of what we find in the literature and the research, if we look at the mainstream biomedical account, if we use suicide as a symptom of psychopathology and depression, and the earlier research in this area was suggesting that up to 90% of individuals who then go on to complete suicide would have been diagnosed with a diagnosable mental disorder or form of psychopathology. But since then, our understanding of suicide has changed over time to where we find, on the contrary, now suicide is often being viewed as a goal-directed action to solve problems, to assert control, or enact resistance, although some would argue that that was already happening in Greek and Roman times. Some of the other theories and metaphors that we find, so the interpersonal theory, which speaks to these sort of three explanations, the feeling socially disconnected or disconnecting themselves from others in the social circle, feeling like a burden and believing that the lives of others in their lives would be better without them, and no longer fearing death. And my own sort of research in this area that looked at young men, one of the participants said he's not afraid of dying because he has nothing to lose. So we really do get that sense of no longer fearing death. Some of the other metaphors in the literature, so suicide feeling like an arrested flight, an escape from self, a cry of pain, and then more recently we see the turn towards critical suicidality, where the emergence of suicide is being understood as a cultural phenomenon And we are now looking more at the cultural context in which the behavior occurs in that sort of situated meaning for the suicidal behavior. Recently, a study was done by Sonia Pache, I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correctly, for a PhD at Stellenbosch University. It was entitled Attempted Suicide Among South African Adolescents Living in a Low-Resource Environment, Contested Meanings, Lived Experience, and Expressed Support Needs. So she found that there's a need for adolescent-specific contextualized theories of suicidal behavior, So suggesting that the theories and metaphors that we just touched on don't suffice for understanding why adolescents or teenagers engage in suicidal behavior. Some of her findings, so she said that the relational context or the home environment was important, the relationships with family members, emotional disconnection, so where there was a failure by the caregivers or the guardians to acknowledge sexual and physical abuse, they felt invisible or unheard. It was shaped by the social economic context, so exposure to poverty and high levels of violence, feelings of powerlessness, and they described the attempts as an escape from pain, as we see in the other literature. The one participant in a study said, "I just wanted everything to stop," and an attempt to alleviate perceived economic burdensomeness. My suicide was going to help people. There would be one less person to worry about, one less person to pay for, and that money that was spent on me could be spent on others in lives. So we might ask, who else can teenagers talk to? So before I get to the findings from the study, I think traditionally or more commonly we'd think of psychologists and other mental health care workers in terms of individual group therapy, occupational therapy, your religious or spiritual leaders, as well as then school counselors and so forth. But quite interestingly, in the study, the participants said that an attachment to younger siblings helped. So they said that one participant said, "She's the only one that makes me be who I am, still alive. I don't want to hurt her." So not engaging in suicidal behavior or not completing suicide to maintain this relationship with the sibling and not wanting to hurt the sibling. Also an attachment to pets was protective, and bonding with other suicidal peers could reduce the feelings of isolation. But in turn, they also said that that also gave them and taught them new ways of engaging in suicidal behavior. So on the other hand, that is also what they reflected. So beyond that, they put it quite, as we might think quite simply, someone who can provide a safe space. So someone who can validate their experiences, improve their connectedness, belonging, and communication so that they feel less invisible to adults. A caring adult who allows them to feel listened to and seen. And they requested that adults just sit and listen. And if adults can get the teenager to open up to you, relate to how they're feeling. And beyond that, they said that suicide attempts could possibly be prevented. The one participant said, if we found a person that really understood us and how we really feel and stuff like that, someone who could just deal with our emotions. So those are some of the findings coming from teenagers that were in a psychiatric or clinical population setting in a study. I think that's where I'll end the presentation for now. Thank you.